NCFL brief or champions brief. How do great traditional debaters debate with only paper? That's the one I was talking to him on. What is going on?
No, the first one.
How do great traditional debaters?
No, the first one.
Oh, sorry. I got him in the wrong one. That is the first one.
Then not that one.
No NCFL brief on champions briefs?
I think so.
Am I looking for your comment?
No, I'm not on there. I just saw this when I was in the bathroom.
Oh, okay, great.
No, the
Am I reading the post?
backcountry guy. You're reading what he... Yeah, this is not that many comments.
Okay. So, I mean, this is fucking dumb. Anyway, no NCFL brief on champions briefs. This is not him. This is...
No.
Flo, So, and Tony Bro. I'm going to read just the OP.
Sure.
I use champion briefs and victory briefs for card collecting, but so far it doesn't seem like either of them have any briefs posted so far for the NCFL tournament. What do? The first comment in the thread is from Backcountry Guy, who's, I believe, a moderator of this sub, right?
Right. He's like a pretty active...
Yeah. Cut your own cards like everyone else instead of outsourcing work, which is a hilarious response.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read the guy's response?
No.
Let's read the thread. OP says, boo! JK, that's what I'll do. Just wish the briefs were up. They make card collection easier. I think it's an overgeneralization to say that everyone else doesn't use briefs, though. Every team in my circuit uses them, and I know they're popular on the national level. Backcountry Guy. I mean, you're not wrong. I just hate them and wish they'd fuck off and die. I like it when debaters do research. I think it's one of debate's most important values, which I agree with. That's his last comment in the thread.
No, keep going.
Next person says, oof, ouchie.
Who is that last person?
Candor Breeze. That's really good. And then back to the OP. I'm sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. But this is...
That's an ouchie for sure, bro.
Wish they'd fuck off and die. No, so this is something that's sort of happening in our region also. There is some discussion in pedagogy as to how much students should be doing their own research and their own work. And is it antithetical to learning or teaching them the wrong things for coaches to write arguments or for coaches to prep people? For example, at the community college level, for the state and nationals, it's all student prep. There's no coach prep because it's all about that philosophy. And then, and even outside of that, there is schools that think debates a lot more about the pedagogy than the competition. They want the students to learn on their own and blah, blah, blah. And then there's schools that just straight up are like, this is what you're going in the round and saying. So that's, I think, something for us to discuss because I think you and I probably agree on this, but I have some thoughts and I sort of want to let you start speaking before I just go straight into my thoughts.
Oh man, how am I supposed to just lie and say I agree with you?
No.
Yeah,
I think we. Oh yeah.
Well,
sure. No. Go ahead. Where do you lie on that? Do you think?
So I fall on that in two different. I have just two thoughts. I guess really is the two big thoughts. My first thought is I think that is an excuse that coaches use to not do work.
Yeah.
And secondly,
what I will say is that's how I was coached. Right? Like I didn't get a lot of real coaching.
Yeah. Oh no.
But I will also say that my coach was completely burnt out on debate and checked out. Yeah. No, not that coach.
Oh yeah.
The other one. No, that it's completely burnt out and like lazy. I think is that coach writ large. So it seems overgeneralizing, but at least in that instance, it's certainly fits.
We had him at different times too, and for me, he was pretty good. And he went out of his way to do a lot of things for me that I appreciated.
No, so I don't mean to diminish his
I just want to be
impact.
clear. Yeah, totally not.
No, and I think he would own that he's like that. He was not that he would not want. Yeah, that lazy. I don't think he sees as an insult.
So the second thing I had first, obviously, again being just that, I think that coaches use it as an excuse to not do work, and I see that a lot, especially in the high school area. But secondly, I think that the best competitors take it upon themselves to do the work anyway. And that is always how I was and how most of the fairly good people I know are, to not too personalized or whatever. I have a student this year who did pretty good in NFALD. He finished in the top 10 in the nation. And he absolutely does his work and, writes, he wrote his own AF before we went into nationals and he had his blocks and all that stuff put together. But that doesn't change the fact that when we got into out rounds and we had to prep, 1NCs against Western Kentucky or whoever, I prepped basically all of them, right? And I stayed up till 3 a.m. doing the work, even though I wasn't an NFA. And I was like, "Here you go, buddy." And the way that it works, in my experience, at least the way I coach LD, is like I'll write the NC or whatever, and then I sit down with the kid and I go, "Okay, cool. Time this. Tell me what you're thinking. What are you liking? What aren't you liking? Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything you want taken out?" And I'll just keep doing revisions until it's that way, because I view a big part of my job for Lincoln Douglas and evidentiary format debate as being a prep coach, right? Like I teach them in round and strategically and stuff, and it's great for people to cut their own cards and their own evidence. I think that's really, really a skill you have to have. But I guess the way I'd put it is, once you have that skill, I don't care about you continuing to do it, right? I need you to be able to do that in the moment when I'm not there, and to be able to end the round audible or have your own stuff. But once I know you can do that, you will do it and have your own stuff. But that's not a reason that, like, when... It's so funny. Robert, actually, your boss.
Boss.
Yeah.
The director of
the
our
man.
program.
The great.
He's the man. He's great. He's great.
He's not a debate guy, but I remember talking to him about this with, like, speeches once. Because he's, gotten criticism over the years, which I think is...
For just writing speeches for people, handing it to them, and then they win,
Yeah.
As though it's that easy.
And dude's like one of the best coaches I've ever seen in my life. But I talked to him, and I was like, so, like, I mean, I know people give you, like, trash about this all the time, but, like, kind of what's your thoughts on it? Because I like to talk to coaches. And he was like, the way I see it is, I get kids who do the work, and I get kids who don't do the work. And the kids who don't do the work, I give them these speeches, and they go do the speeches, and they're fine. And they're better than they would have been because, they have my thing or whatever. And then I get students who are really good, and when my stuff comes together with their stuff, that's when we hit that peak, and that's when you have, like, the excellence involved. And that's just how I feel about it, where it's like, I prep my kids. They pay me to prep my kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, bottom line, for both our high school, middle school, and college, I get paid to do preparation work, to coach students, and to produce materials for them. And so I think that coaches who are hard line the other way, like, I'm not going to call him out. There's a guy in our region who I've had a lot of problems with, who's caused a lot of problems for my students, and who's talked a lot of trash about us, and who's, like, straight up just said, like, oh, well, UOP has so many coaches, and, like, their kids just don't even do the work or whatever. And I guarantee my kids do more work than his kids, right? We make our kids do the work, and, like, that's a part of being on the team, right? Every single student, no matter how new or how old, does the same minimum threshold of work. But those excellent students, whether they're seniors or juniors, we had a new transfer this year, so, one of our previous students, who I won't say by name, but who does more work than just about anyone. More than anyone I've ever met. Just does the work and asks me for work. And as a result, when he needs something from me, if he needs a file, if he's like, hey, can you do this? I just do it. Right. Because I'm willing to put in as much work as the kids put in. And that's where I stand on. I'll let you sort of go.
Here is my perspective on it. I think the perspective that... Okay, so real quick, like, I don't have very much of a horse in this race. I do a little bit of, like, contract work for high school, middle school, but that's whatever. Those kids are not at risk of winning a national championship. And the thing is, me writing them an incredible case isn't going to make a difference. Because if they don't know how to debate, it doesn't matter what the piece of paper says, right? And, frankly, I write them these cases, and then they go home and they write their own arguments, and then they're like, what do you think? I'm like, I thought mine were better. But you wrote your own, so go for it. And they're like, do you think it's good? It's like, no, but, like, whatever. Like,
but it's good that you did the work.
It's good that you get the work, right? So I don't have a horse in the race as far as that goes, but additionally, I mostly coach Parley in college. In fact, the other thing I coach in college is entirely self-prep. So no involvement there. And then in Parley, our two big target tournaments are self-prep. So again, no real horse in the race there. And then the rest of the year, see, that's the...
Like, just change to 30 FPS.
Yeah, but I set it to be whatever.
Anyhow.
And then when we do have, like, whatever, we don't have any big files because it's just me. Well, it's not just me, but, and it's usually me prepping, like, 6 teams at the same time, at least previous years, right? And I just don't have enough time to prep everyone on these, like, word for word, just go in and say this. So in my world of coaching, they have to do things on their own. But here is where I think Backcountry Guy is coming from. I still don't totally agree with him. I think what he's saying is that the most valuable thing that you can take away from debate is research skills. And that unless the kids are learning that, then they're not walking away with the most important thing. But I think in most performative disciplines, right, it's different than debate. Because there is the practice and competition are better separated out in other forms. For example, in gymnastics, right? In gymnastics, it's important to innovate, to have a creative routine, and your coach might help you with that, but generally speaking, the better the gymnast is, the more they're just doing their own shit that no one in the history of gymnastics has done before. I was watching these videos of this girl whose name I forget in the 80s.
Oh, no, the 80s.
No, man. This girl was just doing shit in gymnastics that they just straight up banned. They're like, this shit is way too dangerous. And she did things that no male or female gymnast has really matched since, and they just straight up banned it. They're like, that is too dangerous and too insane, and we're incentivizing people to do this shit by awarding them for it, but blah blah blah. But they were the only person in the world who did those things, right? I don't think you get to that point in dance and in gymnastics, in music, right? Until you practice the performance, right? There's the performance and then there's the writing. And I think, for example, I was a good writer in debate. I was a good research, not really Parley's not super research heavy, right? But as far as the argument writing stuff goes, I was a good writer of arguments in debate. And I had early success strictly off of that, right? I got silver in the nation at the community college state champs, which granted is not the biggest accomplishment in the world, but it's, there's a lot of people there and they had a lot more experience than me. It was my first semester. And I didn't know what a T was, right? But I got that far based on being able to make analytic arguments. But there's performance aspects of debate that I didn't get hands-on practice with that really hindered me, right? What do you do when there is a question of theory, or how do you propose this, or blah blah blah, right? And I think using the music analogy, it's expecting someone to be a good musician who is writing good original songs, but not allowing them to play covers and learn other people's songs in the meantime, right? I don't think that anyone's debate career should be just going into a room and saying what other people wrote for them, whether it's specifically their coach or or they got it from a brief. But what I think is that the brief or the coach or whatever gives you an instance where it's okay, the research is now done for you. Go in and practice every other element in isolation. The performance, how you're dealing with the responses to this argument, how are you explaining this, are you looking at the judge, all of those things, right? Because I feel at the point where you're losing because of your research, you never get practice at those other things. In debate, I think from each debate, you really only get one thing to work on. Your one reason why you lost. And if that reason why you lost is always going to be your research, then you're never going to grow in other areas. So, and the thing is, the briefs aren't that good. No one's winning a championship reading the briefs. Right? And now maybe they are with coach
I
prep.
think that's part of his thing, though. backcountry guys thing where it's like, yeah, the problem isn't that people read the briefs and then they're good. It's that people read the briefs and then they're bad. And that because the briefs exist, you don't have to do work you otherwise would have to do. This is something that people talk about a lot in college policy world, because Wake Forest every year cuts 1.5 million cards, and then everyone just takes their shit. I mean, even Parley kids just read stuff that Wake Forest was like, saying last week or whatever. And so the existence of that stuff enables you to do less or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why some people complain about disclosure, which I think is stupid. But basically in PF, right, like you can go to a tournament without having to write a case because briefs exist, right? And you could do the same thing in LD. Now, will you be successful? Not necessarily, but if you currently suck, you can use briefs as a crutch and just stay there. Because you have that crutch to, like, keep you going or whatever, you can just keep showing up to tournaments and doing reasonably well or whatever because you have that. It's almost like, you know what net decking is?
Yeah.
In game, I think it's almost like net decking, where it's like, yeah, you
just
bought
go
the
on
cards,
the internet and then you just look up what the
successful deck is.
The most successful deck in whatever card game you're playing.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, there's certain problems with that, and certain formats have issues. But like, to be completely honest, a big part of I like to think of myself in a weeaboo sense as like the Kakashi of debate, the copycat ninja, because I was really into like I don't know, mimicry or like modeling and stuff, and I would constantly watch old rounds and then flow people's Ks or whatever they'd read, just positions I liked. And to this day I do that, and same thing with LD, like look at people's apps, how can we rewrite this, how can we do that with a neg or whatever. And I think that's fine. Like I really do, and I think that like for me it made a big difference and like was fun, right? That's also something that gave me my passion in debate, right? Seeing Mike Selk and Josh Rivera debate at SIU is what I was like, oh my god, I love this disableism critique that they're reading. I think it's great. Sam Cooke, seeing neoliberalism that they read, I love that. And then my senior year, that's what I read in 80% of my rounds. And then I was like, well, wait, what's my version of this, right? And then we came up with the death denialism thing. Yeah. And I think that's cool, but I think...
How did death denialism do?
For us, we lost one round ever.
How many times did you run it?
Like 9. And I mean, Dom and Kayla run it a few times. They've lost more often than we did, but...
Because they don't live that life.
Actually, I think... I'm not even sure we actually ever did lose on Death Denialism. Now I'm thinking about it. I know Dom...
Good.
Oh, no, me and Dom did. That's what... Me and Dom ran it. Yeah, we had that low point win at Mile High where we got 29.9 to 30, and he's like, you just didn't answer this one thing, and then we're like, so what about that, though? And the other team was shocked, too. Whatever, anyway.
Whatever.
But yeah, that's the one time we lost to Death Denialism.
So... Which is not what this video is about. I just wanted to know. That's good. That's a little... Right. Well, so here's the other thing. Going back to net decking, right? There's certain aspects of... I don't know. Pick a game.
Card game or...
Sure.
Hearthstone.
Hearthstone. Let's pick another game.
Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yu-Gi-Oh. Great. So there's two aspects of... There's several aspects of playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Right? Obviously, the most important is the heart of the cards.
Absolutely.
Everyone knows that.
Shout out to Robbie.
Does he play Yu-Gi-Oh?
He loves Yu-Gi-Oh. I think he thinks of himself as like Yu-Gi in debate.
Does he have like a dark alter ego that is like 3 feet taller? No, okay. So there's all sorts of skills and things that matter in the game that you...
Predicting what cards your opponent have. What do they use?
That only make a difference if you have good cards.
Sure.
Right? Like, if you have terrible cards...
You're going to lose no matter what.
You're going to lose no matter what. It doesn't matter how good your strategy was. Did the whatever, right? Like, defense, offense, using this. Like, did you have too many spell cards in there in relation to monster cards? And is the number of cards in your deck optimal? Is it too little? Is it too much? None of those things matter if you just have common, low-level, bad cards, right? And so what that means is you never learn those other things as long as you have bad cards. So I think it relates in the sense that you're talking about, like, people get stuck in... they just net deck, right? They just buy the best cards, and then they never really improve because they're still beating bad players. They're staying sort of middle of the middle of the pack, feeling good about themselves, not really feeling a pressure to improve, and then they get stuck and they never really become great. But the thing is, for every one of those, right, there's someone who is trying and is putting in the effort, but it's just such a grind and it's so expensive to get all of these cards, right? And we don't count how many people lose interest in it because they just don't have the good cards and they keep losing, and then they just stop doing the activity, or they see the activity and they're...
But it's a complaint on the subreddit every day of like, oh, debate's gone too elite, we can't afford briefs, we can't go to camps, all the best kids do go to camps, etc., etc., etc.
Well,
like,
I don't think
the
briefs is one thing. I think we can't afford like coaching or whatever, and I think briefs are the answer to that. Now we've talked about like open sourcing that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the wiki or disclosure or whatever checks back against that. I think it checks
if PF did it. Yeah.
If PF did it, right? But it checks back against like this person just hired this school, just hired this many people, and now they're going to win this event forever. Right? And I think it checks back against that because it's like, well, the research, once you read it the first time, is going to be public. So then, what is it about how you can use this research and what you know about this, or how good you are about in debate in general, that allows you to utilize this better than someone else, other than you were just the first to get that research?
Yeah.
And I think that balances it more, right? And I think there's a relationship between the two. So the other aspect of it is from like a judging perspective, right? Like, yikes, man. Like, kids are not good at debate. And as someone who coaches middle schoolers, like, I don't have to go to a tournament to know what the average middle schooler thinks about anti-missile defense systems, antitrust policy, or anti-missile defense THAAD. THAAD in South Korea, right? Like, it's ridiculous. It would be... we pick the topics to educate the kids on it, right? Mm-hmm. It would be ridiculous for us to be like, here's the topic, now tell me what you know. Like, I don't know anything. I know nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, do some research. And they're like, well, the first page of Google says this. And it's like, no, you have to research better. But if everyone's researching that way, why do you have to research better, right? And it's
briefs are also like a weird double-edged sword, I think, in that same sense, because it's like, for me as a prep coach, I get the briefs so that I can see what I need to block out. Yeah. I'm like, okay, most of the people are going to be dumb and are just going to use this. And
yeah, that's why anytime I've looked at a brief, it's like, okay, well, here's what we need answers to. I never take arguments out of there.
Yeah. And also, I think the other problem is that, like, dude, even like, so for the TOC topic, the gold, TOC topic for PF, the India Security Council, yeah. I went through...
Space debris.
Okay. Space debris.
It's the best argument on the topic.
Yeah. Anyhow, it's already over. It turns out it wasn't.
No? Did anyone run it?
I don't think I saw a single debate.
No one thought of it. Was it the best one?
The one, I guess.
They have anti-satellite missiles.
Yeah, but... Anyway.
I mean, there's no...
I agree.
Internal link.
That was my LD app that I wrote that Robbie was beating people on.
Yeah, no, there's I didn't do the research on it. I told the kids to do the research on it. And they're like, I can't find a card that says that the UN wants to stop them in the status quo.
Yeah.
And I was like, fair.
Exactly, yeah.
But if that were true, it would be the best argument.
Anywho, that said, I went through all of Champions Briefs and all the Victory Briefs to, get stuff, block it out, and just write indicts for every card. And, literally, I went to one card. I think it was in Champions Briefs. I could be wrong if it's whatever. Victory Briefs or Champions Briefs. It's one of you. I think it's Champions. There was a card in there where it had, here's the card, here's the citation. And I was like, okay, well, I went to it, and it was behind a paywall. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, open sesame. And I got into it, and it was literally the wrong article. Their citation and the author they quote and everything is a completely different article.
Have you ever thought about how quickly those briefs come out?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
The turnaround on those has to be 3 days.
Well, I mean, it's possible that they're just doing the ahead of time because you kind of know the area or whatever ahead of time at least.
That would be insane. No one's doing that.
Well, whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Here's the thing. For how often those things are distributed for free and how widely, they can't be making enough money to have
a bunch of staff
a significant number of staff do that level of detailed research into that broad.
Well,
I think what they do is they get people who've been doing this activity long enough that they can write shit quick, and then saying you have 3 days.
I think so. We're getting a little off topic, but I think that would be another interesting thing to talk about. But I would actually tend to disagree with that because there's two things I think you're not considering. One, their main thing is a camp. Right, that's really where they're making the money from, I believe, for most of those institutions.
Sure, but they have to pay the people
it's just
for
like advertising. But B,
yeah, but they have to pay the writers.
So back to it. B, the people they're paying are high school students or like recently graduated high school students who don't make any money.
That's fair.
And who just want to be cool.
Basically slave labor.
Yeah, it's the secret with debate is that grad students and recent graduates from high school or whatever
or just people
are the only.
Are very
Perkins
nice.
told me about this. Joseph Perkins, he's like, yeah, that's the dirty secret of forensics. Is that like the only reason it works is because we basically have what would be considered like drastically unfair labor practices and would be like major issues if people knew about it.
Well,
yeah,
you know why they don't put speeches on the internet? Like NSDA
Copyright.
is behind. Copyright. The whole activity violates
it's
copyright
law,
laws.
yeah.
You're selling a performance that someone else wrote without giving them any money.
Yeah,
and it's just like, shh, don't. And that's why they don't. The activity doesn't want like major documentaries or movies made about it. They're like trying not to bring too much attention.
To wrap it up.
Yeah,
briefs.
Briefs and briefs and like
coach prep
and coach prep.
I tend to think it's a good thing. I think it's a necessary thing for sort of a lot of continuation for folks, but can also very quickly become a crutch that people rely on that's bad for them. And I think that the good people are going to be good whether briefs exist. I don't know. Without even getting into the discussion of like monetization and stuff, like it's a whole other thing. If briefs were all free and were all open source, then like it'd be a different discussion. But because people can buy expensive ass briefs or whatever, it makes a difference that it might not.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be able to.
I think briefs and coach prep make a significant difference on who ends up in the middle of the pack.
That's a great way of putting it.
But everyone who was going to be at the bottom was going to be at the bottom either way, and everyone who was going to be on top is going to be on top either way. And that's not to say that who is in the middle of the pack is inconsequential or isn't important to discuss, but I think it's important to frame the discussion that way.